VCU, 19-point second-half comeback, staring North Carolina in the eye, not backing down, and knocking out one of the blue blood programs in college basketball to move on to the round of 32, setting up a date with the Illini of Illinois. And joining us now to discuss their awesome, awesome head coach, and I'm so happy for him, and, just human interest stuff. Like, I love the fact that his dad's there in the, just such a great moment, right? Just as human beings, you can appreciate that. Phil Martelli Jr. here with us on the show, fresh off the upset over North Carolina. Coach, congratulations. You better you bet. Nick Kostos, Westwood One Sports. How are you feeling today on this Friday morning?
Nick, I appreciate you having me on and all those kind words. How am I feeling right now? I'm feeling like I haven't slept, but in the best way possible. And I said to somebody else this morning, I said, when you get to this time of year and you have a smile on your face because you haven't had any sleep and you've been staring at a computer screen watching film all night long, that means really good things are happening. So we're all excited.
What's it been like for you since the game went final? I saw you were on SportsCenter. I'm sure you're doing other media. Like, how much did you sleep? How much did you sleep?
Yeah, not very much. We were doing a bunch of media stuff. It helps when you play the first game in a bracket like this because then that second game's going on. My brother, who's on my staff, who's my associate head coach, and Chris Cole, who was with me at Bryant and here with me at VCU, those guys went out to scout. They had, Illinois and Penn as the next scouts, so they were out there scouting. We were bopping around doing the media stuff. Got back to the hotel. There was only a few minutes left in that game, so I started Illinois prep then. And that game went final. We gathered the guys around midnight to kind of give them the schedule because we didn't know game time. We didn't know who we were going to play, and then didn't know game time for Saturday until super late. So once we got all that, we got them together for about 10 minutes at about midnight, went through the schedule, sent them to bed, and then, we were down in that meeting room. I finally left. It was like Survivor. It was like one by one. We had about 10 or 11 people in there, and by 4 a.m., I think there was 3 of us in there, and then I left at about 5:30, and my brother and Mike Parmy, our analytics guy, were still in there. I came up here and to my room and was finishing watching film, and I did lay down for probably about an hour and a half, from maybe like 5:30 to 7. I don't know if I slept, but I did lay down at least.
That is exceptional, and I hope you know that I mean no disrespect when I say this. I think a lot of people would agree with this. Maybe the only people that wouldn't would be you and your players. It felt like this game was over in the second half. The Carolinas having their way, and Carolina's high flying, going up and down. And all of a sudden, right, the game starts to turn. And it didn't happen all of a sudden, right, because you guys had to, overcome a 19-point deficit. It took time. You had to go through the whole overtime period. At what point during this, Coach, and maybe your answer is just like we knew the whole time, but at what point did you really think, like, yeah, we can come back here, like we can do this?
Well, we've been a really resilient group all the way through. And our second game of the year, we played Utah State, who's obviously playing today. Really good team. They were a really experienced team coming back. And, we always choose to play a really hard non-conference. I'm always a believer in that. Play a really tough non-conference schedule to get you ready, for what's to come. And, so the opportunity came to play them on a neutral in Texas. We did that. And it was a very similar game. And we went down 17 in that game in the second half, stormed all the way back, tied the game, had a chance to win it, ended up losing on the last possession. But I knew walking out of there, I was like, man, that was something. With 9 new guys, new staff, second game of the year, that's so easy to just give in, right? It's so easy to stop, point fingers, blame somebody else, just say, the game's over. It's only the second game of the year. Who cares? Any of those things, right? Like, would be normal. And these guys didn't do that. And I was like, man, we just have something. Like, we just have something. And I would tell them all the time through that non-conference, like, these are the games that are going to prepare us, for when it really, really matters. And yeah, it'd be nice to just go through non-conference and go, 16-0 or 17-0 and have a great record. And we still had a really good record and we won some really good games, but those games all prepared us for this. And, losing that game on November 7th, yeah, it sucked, right? It didn't feel good. We didn't want to lose that game. But if it got us ready to win a game on March 19th like that, I'd much rather have the March 19th win than the November 7th win. And, but there was no doubt, because of that, because of those things we've been through and the resilience, those guys just kept talking to each other like, next play, next play, next play. We just got to win this next play, and then it just started to snowball from there.
VCU head coach Phil Martelli Jr. on the show, coming off their electric win yesterday over North Carolina, advancing to the round of 32. You better you bet here on Westwood One Sports. Coach, I hope you can appreciate this question. I feel like I have to ask it because it's a huge story coming out of the game, and it involves the team that you beat yesterday in North Carolina, where Carolina's players were saying they're tired after the game. Some of your players kind of intimating that they could see it in North, and I don't think that's an insult. Like I was watching the game. Carolina did look like was gassed, especially in the overtime period. Were you surprised by the lack of subs by Hubert Davis during the game? Was it something you were like, you're paying attention to that in overtime at the end of regulation? Like, talk me through that with North Carolina and how this happened for them. And again, I hope you can appreciate the question given the national story that is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about, their stuff, but I do know that's kind of who we are. Like we are built for those types of games, those types of moments. We played a game 2 weeks ago, last regular season game of the year at Dayton, big game, first place on the line, all these different things. And there was a stretch in that game. It went like 7 or 8 minutes to start the game. I don't think I've ever been a part of a game like this where it went 7 or 8 minutes to start the game with no stoppages. And our guys just kept going and going and going. And, we have built that. It's the way that we train. Our strength coach, Danny Roos, is as good as there is in the country. And, he gets people trying to pull him all the time, but he loves VCU and doesn't want to leave VCU. And he could easily be in the NBA or at a Power 5 or whatever, but loves VCU. And, he trains those guys hard. When we practice, most of what we do is up and down in the full court, so they're just used to that. And it's not uncommon for us to see, no matter how many guys teams are playing, to look across and say, look, they're wearing down. They're wearing down and we're going to keep going. And, it's really just that mindset that we have. It doesn't matter what the other team has done, what their subs, what their whatever. I think if you went back and watched a lot of our games, you'd see that in a lot of these games in the second half where that other team is looking around going like, all right, like, I don't know if I have anything left. And our guys are looking around going like, let's go find that extra gear. And I think that's what happened. I think really that's the story, subs, no subs. I don't think that really, I didn't sub either. I played 5 guys down the stretch, most of those minutes. And, they just, again, because of the way they've been trained, they just have an extra gear.
Final question for you, Coach. When I tell you that tomorrow you guys are a 10.5-point underdog against Illinois, your reaction to that and what you will say to your players as you guys enter the game as an underdog is what and why?
Yeah, I mean, I woke up, I went to bed, well, use that in quotes, right? I went to bed last
right.
night. They were the second best offensive team in the country. And when I woke up and refreshed it this morning, they were the most efficient offensive team in the country. So it's not surprising. They're huge. They shoot the three. They chase it on the glass. We're going to have to defend. And, whatever that is, I don't even look at any of that stuff, right? Like, I don't look at underdog, favorite, whatever. Like, we go out there, for us right now, this is trying to get number 2. We always break it down to those numbers. In the non-conference, it started with number 1, and we got up to whatever we got up to in the non-conference. And then for the conference play, we reset that, and we start with number 1, and we got up to, I think, 15 in conference play. Conference tournament, it was number 1. Then we talked about number 2. Then we talked about number 3. For Thursday, for yesterday, we talked about just getting number 1. And the first thing I said to them after the game was like, now we just focus on getting number 2. Whoever it is, whatever it is, however it is, it doesn't really matter. These guys have a belief. They've worked really hard, and they've built themselves up into champions first, winning the conference. And now here they are, tomorrow, whenever time we play, we'll be one of, at that point, probably like 28 teams, 27 teams, something like that, still playing.
It's amazing. And Coach, last thing here, just again, I said this at the start. I went to Fordham. I was at Fordham when your dad had St. Joe's when they were the number one team in the country with Jameer Nelson and Delonte West, and I worked at the radio station at Fordham. Your dad is a sweetheart. And just like you and I are around the same age, I just, like, even if, no matter whether anyone listening liked Carolina in the game, if they're a Carolina fan, I think everyone can appreciate, like, a son coaching his team to a big win in the tournament, and his dad is there in attendance, and we all know who his dad is because we've all been watching the sport. And I know that had to have been a special moment for you. A sincere congratulations to you and your team, and the best of luck tomorrow against the Illini.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Nick.
Phil Martelli Jr. joining us here on You Better You Bet. And he's obviously intimately familiar with that St. Joe's team, like with his dad, obviously, at St. Joe's.